Great. Welcome this morning to our assessment directors meeting. We have all of you in this room, and thank you for coming. I appreciate it. We also have about 75 people online, so welcome to those Adobe. And Emily, if you'll keep track of the questions for me as we go today, we'll try to get everybody's questions answered. So we have a pretty big agenda this morning. We're going to be talking a little bit about some board updates, if anybody's been keeping track of looking at the newspaper. We have some SAGE updates and some UA updates. We'll talk about, you know when your phone does that? It's like it just drives me crazy. I was like, who's talking? EL exemptions, the special codes, SAGE summer school. Our testing schedule for next year, we have it in 3 ways. We're going to ask you to weigh in on some of that. Our online reporting system, we have some things that we'd like to show you for 16-17. And I'm not sure where you're going to go with that, but I want to give it out to the field so that you guys can help weigh in on it. We'll talk about the K3 tool update. That's out for, well, should be out for RFP. Joe's going to let me know today. WIDA, DLM, dual immersion assessment. I'll give you an update on where we are on that. And then we have a NAEP update. So let's talk for just a minute about some of the things that have been happening the last week politically and policy-wise on the landscape. So the Board of Education voted last Friday to begin a review, a sort of an accelerated review of the English language arts and the math standards. And they also made a move toward discontinuing SAGE testing in grades 9 and 10. So I had a flood of emails and phone calls on Friday saying, oh, can our 9th and 10th graders just quit testing? It's like, no. They may wish that, but no. So let me just sort of explain what happened and where we're going from here so that you can get this information out to your LEAs and so that we can get some information out there. So the board will conduct a comprehensive review and update of our English language arts standards and math standards at the elementary and secondary levels. That is contingent on receiving one-time supplement from the legislature to cover the cost of that. So the board does that anyway. So they're constantly looking, revising, updating the standards. We just, revised and updated the math standards, and we've been going through this. And it's a really hard, long process to do each one of those. And so, they're always out for 90-day public review. We try to let as many people as comment as possible, but somehow there's still the perception out there that maybe we're not public enough or maybe we're not hearing people enough. So they would do an accelerated review of these, but only if the legislature gives an appropriation to sort of increase our bandwidth to be able to do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that they voted to support the elimination of administering SAGE in 9th and 10th grades and replace it with ACT. So remember that SAGE will be optional, and Emily's going to change this. I noticed a typo here. It says for 15-16, that really should say 16-17 instead of 15-16. So we'll make sure that we fix that before. Of course, 9 people look at this before I put it up there, and then Clyde's like, oh, did you mean 16-17? I'm like, yeah, number 10. So anyway, that's for next year, right? Because that wasn't in rule until this year. So we'll have to just sort of wait and play it out a little bit and see how it goes. The SAGE issue about the test and elimination of tests is assigned to the board's accountability task force. And the next slide will show you who the members of the task force are. But any final change, remember, would require legislative action. So if they don't take it up, and I don't think they will in the special session this week, according to what I've read, that actually pushes it down the road. So unless there's another special session this year, next legislative session, and the session ends in March, then the board has 120 days to make rules for that. So that, if that happens, then SAGE isn't going away for 9th and 10th grade for at least another year. The contract ends. Next year's the last year of the SAGE test the way it is, the contract with AIR anyway. So we're moving toward a new RFP, and the testing may look very different. And so there's some things in flux right now. But, please let your teachers know it's not gone yet, okay? And lots of people still have to do a lot of study and looking at it and before any of those changes are made. So any questions on that? Renee? If you can just clarify for next year for the 11th graders, is that just language arts or is it all three tests? That's for any tests that are given in 11th grade. So it includes, whatever courses that are attached to a SAGE in 11th grade. Now, that decision is not made by teacher or by school. That decision is made by LEA. So by September 15th, even though sorry, Shar. She's waving at me. She's asking, does that just include ELA 11 and the math test? But it's by grade, not by course. To not have students in 11th grade tests. So it's whatever tests that are coordinated with whatever course they're taking. So it could be physics, chemistry, biology, math secondary 2, math secondary 3, ELA 11, if they're repeating for 10 or going for 12. It's any of those courses that they're in 11th grade. Hal?
Yeah, the 12th grade issue in those secondary courses is because the decision to test at the secondary level is tied to course, not grade level. So that's why it gets tricky with the 11th grade being optional, because you could have mixed classrooms, say a chemistry classroom. You've got 10th, 11th, and 12th graders in there. The test would be optional for 11th graders, not optional for 10th and 12th graders. So that's why we'll be looking for specifics of those details in your testing plans for next fall, which more information will be coming how we're going to gather that from you on what your intentions are for 11th graders. But you got to just keep in mind the secondary assessment system is course-based, not grade-based. So we're working on the logistics of how to enter this new option for the grade-based students in a course-based structure. So stay tuned. We're going to give you some direction as soon as we can hammer out logistics. We're working with Angie Stallings and the board to look at some clarifications in board rule that may go to the board in June for their consideration to give some better clarification on how we're going to be collecting that 11th grade option.
Right, and we just need to have that information. I think it's in board rule right now that we need to have the information by September the 15th. Right? Yeah. So that's the proposal. That's what's going to be in board rule for that. Yeah. The next question is, okay, 9th and 10th grade won't test at all, and then 11th grade will take ACT next year. Tara Lynn, again, we won't know that until the legislature takes action. Until the legislature takes action, it's business as usual. Okay? All 11th graders take the ACT. It's a full census testing, just like we've done for the last 3 or 4 years. We'll continue that. The other tests in 11th grade will be optional based on what your district or LEA decides. The 9th and 10th grade question, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Okay? David, Alpine. So 11th grade will be optional by LEA, and 9th and 10th. I think I just answered that, David. Okay? Unless you have another question. Yes. The plan and Explore no longer exist, okay, as such. ACT has a couple of new products. One of them is a pre-10th grade, or a 10th grade test, a pre-ACT test, and a 9th grade test out there. They're, that would come in at additional cost. They're about, I don't know, anywhere between $750,000 and $800,000 a piece. So I'm not sure. It's been those ideas have been floated. There's also an Aspire test that's 9th and 10th grade. So the two hurdles that I can see around ACT are, number one, that doesn't offer the accommodations for students with disabilities. So you have this big IDEA hurdle that you have to jump. The second is that based by many studies, not many, I guess there's been 4 or 5 big studies put out there this year nationally, that ACT does not match the standards. And so that's another hurdle that doesn't match what we teach. So, but if it's chosen for accountability purposes, that may be something different than what the board decides to do around testing altogether. So just stay tuned, and we'll see what happens down the road. So right now we're going to continue with ACT just the way it is, but Plan and Explore gone. But there may be some new products out there, and there may be something, you know, that the board would maybe consider a 9th and a 10th grade ACT type test. So, but I'm not sure. And that hasn't, I mean, those are just ideas that people have right now. Tim? No. Tim asked if there would be any way that would be in place for this fall. No. No, not this fall. Yes, Laura. This is Laura Belknap. She's one of our board members. She's actually the committee chair of standards and assessment.
I really wanted to be with you today, and I'm actually one of the 4 and one of the 2 on this board that on this board that didn't vote for either one of these. But because it gives such problems here. However, I want you to know that the special session was yesterday, and it did finish, and they did give us our money. However, there is talk of another special session, and it would literally be on this subject. So that is coming. So when you say it won't happen, it may happen. So I just want clarity on that. The other thing is on the review of standards, that actually comes to my committee, and I'd love any information that you can give me as to where you think we should head. What are you hearing from your teachers? Because that's what matters. Okay, so give that to us so that we can, what should we review first? We're going to have to review. We have to, so.
If they want to weigh in on any of these assessment issues, would that be great for them to weigh in with you as well? And I appreciate Laura being here. So, yeah, so yes, and Laura is absolutely correct. So if they call another special session this year, it may happen this year. So, you know, some days we hear yes, some days we hear no. Laura says yes, so that she's more in the know than I am. So I'm, you know, no, that's great. So as soon as we have any information, you know, as soon as I have any information, you know, I always try to share it with you. So that's sort of the current landscape right now. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had 2 questions, and maybe you've already addressed them, but for SAGE being optional for 11th graders, is that referring to Secondary Math 3 and English 11? Okay, so if they're in biology or earth science, if they're an 11th grader, we can choose to not test them. And then the other question is, has there been talk about, is the intention that SAGE will continue for all other grade levels, grades 3 through 8?
Yes, we will be, you know, I don't think there's a question around 3 through 8 at this point. So, but please remember that next year, the 16-17 year, is the last year of SAGE as it is. Now, we own our item bank, and moving forward, you know, it may be delivered on a different platform. We may have a different vendor that helps us, but it'll be SAGE-like, although it probably won't be called SAGE. We may we may do some rebranding there. Okay. Yes.
I'll state kind of the obvious, and I listened to the board meeting and the tone of the governor, and they seem to understand this, but without direction by January or February next year, I mean, all of us are working hard to keep integrity of high school SAGE testing, but it's going to go to a level that is going to be beyond bad, trying to, I don't even want to think about the opt-outs in grade 9 and 10 in April when the legislature is still discussing it. I mean, it's not a good situation. But I have some confidence that people know they have to have a decision before then, because it's going to be really bad.
I think it's all, yeah. Yes, Hal. I think that as assessment directors across the state, you know, I think that you're more cognizant
probably than a lot of people about the ripple effects and the fallout of this. And I totally agree with you. They've been asking for opt-out lots of people have been asking for opt-out numbers. We can't give you any opt-out numbers until the testing window closes because you have that special codes time. So we can tell you who's opted out so far of who has reported it, but you have until the end of the testing window, right, to code in your opt-outs. So we really won't know, and we'll try to get you that information as soon as possible. We were at 1% the first year. We were at 3% last year. So we'll see what happens this year. So far, it doesn't look terrible, but I don't know until you guys let me know, you put your codes in. So anyway, so this accountability task force that's looking so go to the next slide. And if you want to weigh in with any of these folks, so the people that are on the accountability task force are board members. This is a board accountability task force. Brittany Cummings is the chair, and her information, and you got this information in your PowerPoint. Dave Crandall, Spencer Stokes, Jefferson Moss, and Leslie Castle. And I put their information straight from the website in here so you know that these are the folks that you can weigh in with if you'd like to around the accountability task force around the SAGE test. And I'd like you to know that they do appreciate hearing from the field, and they need to hear from the field. And probably they hear from a lot of the community members, but they don't often hear from practitioners as much. And having more information from practitioners would be really helpful for them, I believe. So anyway, I just wanted to give you that information. Okay, so I'm going to let the team talk to you a little bit about SAGE and some of the updates we have. Here's our voice, David.
Okay. All right. I'll try to be quick. So I get asked on probably a daily basis, what's the deal with English learners and when they are exempt in SAGE and when they are not, and why things aren't generating correctly, and do you need to set a code? And I designed this flow chart in the hopes of really simplifying it and helping you to be able to figure out exactly what to do. So do I have a laser? Does that work? Does it work on the, it doesn't work? Wow. Well, it was bigger and then it got, yeah, okay. Point being, first thing you need to check, it is based on two fields. The first field you need to look at is limited English. If limited English does not equal F, O, or Y, you need to set it to F, O, or Y. Next, look at the first enroll in the U.S. field. We base it on if it is their first year being enrolled, not their first year living in the United States, not if they're an immigrant or not. It is it is their first year being enrolled in the U.S. If that field is not set, please set it. And if both are set and their first year enrolled is this year, then the field should generate correctly. If it doesn't generate correctly, then please contact me and I can see if there's a bug somewhere in the system. Now, we've had some discussions regarding cases where the student was previously enrolled, maybe many years ago. They were a kindergartner or first grader, but now they're back in the country and they're 7th or 8th grader. They still don't speak English. They're essentially as if they were a first-year student. So the direction we got in conversations with Title III was if there is an enrollment gap of 2 years or greater, then you can exempt them from the test as though it was their first year. Unfortunately, we can't get this derived from the UTREX fields because the first enroll field should be, like 10 years ago or something like that. So we mentioned this in the April 29th AD memo, but the idea is you can exempt them in the special codes tool in Data Gateway. So we have brought back the codes 103, 104. So if their enrollment is before April 15th, set code 104 and they will be exempt from ELA. If their enrollment is after April 15th, set code 103 and they'll be exempt from ELA, math, and science. Okay, question. Where is the limited English field is what Teresa Wilson has asked. And that is hard for me to say because I don't know how it appears in your SIS. I would recommend contact whoever your LEA UTREC specialist is to figure out how your SIS converts whatever you enter in into the limited English field in UTRECs. It looks like Brandon Thacker's asking, I've been told that the test generates for all first-year ELLs anyway in case the school decides to test the student to establish baseline data. Yes, that's an excellent point. Basically, we are not exempting the students. We don't stop sending the data. We are, and I've mentioned this before, we're creating a pseudo-dual enrollment. Their exempt tests will appear under LEA 00. If you look them up on the roster in TIDE, they will still be there. You have to remember not to test them and not test them. But it's more the point that if you don't test them, that test is going to be under this made-up 00 LEA. It won't be tied to you. So that way you can opt them in if you wish to test them, but you are not required to do the test, and it is already untied from you for accountability purposes. He asks again, what exactly does the field should generate correctly mean? It means that our code, if those two are set, will automatically create that pseudo-dual enrollment. And that is what should get sent to TIDE. So you should see any of those tests that they'd be exempt for under LEA 00. If that is not the case, and you can tell by searching for the student in TIDE, there's when you look them up, there's a column that's ELL. If they are, it'll say N, B, or A. N means there's no exemptions. B means it's the before April 15th exemption, which is for ELA only. A means it's the after April 15th exemption, which is for ELA, math, and science. If that is not appearing correctly, then again, contact me. I can look the SSIDs up and figure out, is it a bug in our code? Is it something else? In general, I would say the code has been working correctly at this point. So I wouldn't expect to see that, but always love finding our mistakes. Does anyone in the room have any questions related to this? Okay, one more question on that. If exempted EL student starts the test, how does reporting work? If you test the student, then we are going to take that test. So again, if it's a case where the student should not have started that test, you can, I'm looking to Jared, would that be a case where they would invalidate it or reset it? Okay, if you start testing an EL student who could be exempt and then you realize, whoops, this guy shouldn't have started taking the test, you would, right. Okay, yeah, so invalidate it if they shouldn't have tested. Okay, good. That's the one I just answered. So if they start the test, if you let them do the test, it's going to be like they just took the test as normal. If they shouldn't have taken the test, then invalidate them. Okay, real quick, I want to talk about some special code numbers related to the special codes tool. I took a look, and so far we've got just under 17,000 codes have been set in our data gateway tool that we rolled out last month. I did a quick little audit to see what are the codes that are being set. About 75%, 3 out of every 4 codes is this student transferred before testing window, which makes sense. That's kind of what we envisioned would be its main use right now, because again, if the student has not transferred, they're still being sent to TIDE, and the code should be set in TIDE. Remember, that's kind of the general rule you should follow. If the code can be set in TIDE, please set it in TIDE. If it can't be, then set it in Data Gateway. With that said, the second most common code that was set was this 108, course will continue next school year, which is surprising because that would imply that they're probably still taking the test or they're still taking the course, so they should still be in TIDE. So it's possible some things, and again, I kind of figured this would happen, you know, if you start bulk setting codes, it's possible some codes would be set that shouldn't. So actually, I counted, and just the majority of these 3,447 are for students who actually already exited the course. So they probably should have been set as 112, but were for some reason set as 108. And with that in mind, I also just counted 352 codes were set, and we're still sending that student to Tide. So the code could have been set in Tide, but is being set in Data Gateway. So this is, you know, we're all kind of learning, and there's maybe still some training issues. I just want to again emphasize, if you can set the code in Tide, please set the code in Tide. I don't have the exact number. There were cases of these where, you know, the 112 student transferred out was being set in the tool, even though we're still sending something to Tide. So the student clearly did not transfer out because they're still very much there and being sent with an active enrollment. To help with this in the tool, we added an improvement yesterday, which is, you know, you should be able to filter on the course exit date. And before it was less than or equal. So you could see everyone who had who exited the course before whatever date you set. Now that can be switched. The default is still less than or equal, but you could set it to greater than or equal. So if you wanted to, you could easily check and see how many 112s did I set where the course exit is in the future, and you should be able to do that. And if you need any help with that, I can probably walk you through it. But that could be a quick way to see if you have any of these cases where you said the kid transferred out, despite the fact that they are still very much in the course. Okay, is is 112 used for students what are still enrolled but withdrew from the course? 112 is basically you communicating to us that you did not have a chance to test the student because they either left the course or the school before you had a chance. It says, I think the name of it is student transferred before the testing window. Technically, it could be after the testing window if it was before you had a chance to test them. So basically, that's you're saying, we would have loved to test this kid, but we couldn't because they left. Is there a report I can run to see a list of special codes and students? That's kind of what the tool is. You look them up by test. I suppose if you absolutely wanted to see, you know, the complete thing without having to do it by each of the 27 tests, I could pull those numbers for you and send it over MoveIt if that would be a preference. But that's already what the tool is. Yes, it's test by test. Yes, I'm trying to move really quickly. Okay. I just wanted to go over this calendar real quick. This was also in the April 29th AD memo. So right now we're in kind of this first period here where you should be setting codes in Tide when possible and checking in Data Gateway, reviewing in Data Gateway. Our big important dates to bear in mind are we will be getting nightly updates from May 15th to June 5th from the special codes. So before it was just changing once a month. Now it should be updating every night. We'll receive our final files on final special codes on June 20th. The final UTREX submissions should be no later than July 7th, and we'll receive our final student test file on July 8th. So that's kind of when we can guarantee that nothing is going to change. There will be no more updates of those particular aspects. So basically, we've created two buttons, and this is in the training. So go back and look at the video, the webinar we did, or look at the PowerPoint. Once you are done testing, there is also now a button in the Special Codes tool that basically says Sage Complete. Once your LEA is done testing, press that button, certify that you're done testing. Then, once you have basically decided that everything is good in terms of the special codes, then the second button is there for you to press and say, this is it, this is good. Even if things change in the future, we certify that this is our LEA's information. Okay, last thing, a little bit different. US spreadsheets have been out a little bit, and I've gotten 9 back out of about the 100 or so that were sent out. And you're starting to wrap up testing, so hopefully this number will really start to grow. Just some key points. Please upload it to MoveIt, either the testing folder or the UA folder. We do not have access to the other folders. If you put it in a different one, we may never even know that you sent it. Also, please do not send it over email. There's personally identifiable information in this file, and it should not be sent under email, which is not secure. Second point, many have noticed that third graders are in the file. They should have been filtered out. Third graders do not take science. So my recommendation to you is just completely ignore them. Once we get the file back from you, we're going to strip those out immediately, so don't even worry about them. If you have to add any new enrollments, make sure that they match what is in your SIS, which should match what is in UTREX, because we'll need to be able to match on that in order to verify that that student should have tested. And honestly, that spreadsheet I sent out was about a month old, and it was based on what was in UTREX a month ago. If you need a new spreadsheet, if you want one, if you haven't filled it out yet, you can contact me, and I'll gladly create a new one for you based on what is in UTREX as of today. Are there any questions? Of course he does. If a district has year-round schools, at which date should the completed testing button be clicked? When your LEA has completed testing. Yes, so once all of your year-round schools are over, that's when you press it. If there's still someone who might take a test, then don't press the button, regardless of your schedule. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Again, any other questions, email me, grab me at the end of this meeting. I'm going to pass it over to Jared, or possibly to Joellen again real quick. Oh, okay.
Okay, so this next issue Julie's going to talk through, and this is the reports that parents see. So we need your input on what parents are seeing on the online reporting system. So we have had our technical advisory committee weigh in with us around removing scaled scores on the reporting categories. And so Julie is going to walk you through that. We have our technical advisory committee that comes in that has all of the expert statisticians and psychometricians, and of course there's error in those scores, right? And lots of error in some cases. And so we've had some issues around that. Of course, if the statisticians all had their way, we wouldn't be reporting anything to you at all, right? So we really need your input on this. And so I'm going to let Julie walk you through what the new parent reports are going to look like, or could look like, and then we have some decisions to make around interim and summative.
Thanks, Joellen. All right, I know you can't see this very well, okay? But imagine in your minds what the report looks like now, right? Can you see it? There's the reporting category on the upper right-hand side. It has a scaled score with a little gray number that no one seems to know what to do with in it. Then it has the plus minus equals for the proficiency relative to self, performance relative to proficiency. You got that in your mind right now? Okay, sorry, I forgot to put the what it looks like now in to contrast this with. Yeah, this is the parent-facing report, right? That's the intended audience for this. But there's some ripple effects that are going to happen with some of the changes that we make in the reporting to schools and teachers as well. All right, so the first thing, as outlined in the first text box, we've moved things around, okay, because of real estate on the page. Now, again, this is a proposal because we have about not a week to get decisions back to AIR to implement things for next year. Remember how this is that 16-month process that starts over every 12 months? We are almost ready to lock down next year's specifications. So this is a pretty quick turnaround on feedback, okay? And if you would like some hard copies of some bigger pictures of these, email me. I'd be happy to kick some out so that you can see more. Okay, so we've got the reporting categories moved to the middle, and then the writing remains at the bottom with the rubric. Okay, next slide, Emily. So I pulled it apart. Here's kind of a blow-up of the top half of this thing, right? So we've got the comparison to the district and the school remains now in the upper right-hand corner. That text that used to kind of be towards the middle bottom is now run along the side. There's no changes to the overall scale score, proficiency, temperature bar thingy there. Okay, so we're moving some things around. Next slide. Okay, here's where the changes. So here's the reporting categories. Now, instead of a number for the scale score with the error, it's been turned into a graphical representation to give you some feedback, like where's the kid, right, on the reporting categories. Because the scale scores are wrapped in so much error, right, specifically on the interim. So we're talking interims, then we're talking about what are we going to do with the summative. Okay, but specifically for the interim, this conversation got kicked off because there's been a lot of questions in the field as we've been looking fall to spring, fall to winter growth. Heaven's sakes, my own 8th grader, I looked at her winter versus spring and it's all over the place because she, God bless her heart, she maxed out the scale pretty much on one of the tests, and so the error was pretty large. So she bounced significantly lower on the summative from what she had on the winter interim. And I was like, as a parent, like, wow, a 70 point drop in an overall scale score seems really big. Anyway, I digress. But so the interim, right? For sure for the interims, we're looking to do this, and then we're looking to see how far we can roll this into the summative. Remember the interims, we made them shorter. Even the full classroom period was shorter, so the error is larger than it is on the summative. Okay, do you see the green bars, right? So the gray, the full thing, here's kind of a blowout of the little bar. The gray bar has a little white line in it that shows the overall proficiency reference. The black line would be what the kid's scaled score would be, and the green is the error. So the kid's actual score is somewhere in that green bar, but our best guess to what that actual score is the black line. So I can see this student above proficiency, right? And then you've got the plus minus equals staying for relative to self, again relative to proficiency. So the plus minus equals relative to proficiency is almost the same thing as what's being said in this little bar here, right? Because if this is significantly above proficiency, that's going to be a plus, right, in the relative to proficiency. Relative to self still, is compared to the student's overall score. Joellen.
Explain how the plus, minus, and equals are one standard deviation.
I think you just did. So the plus, minus, equals means within a standard deviation of proficiency. Plus means above a standard deviation, right? And the minus is one standard deviation below. So it's right around the middle, right? Or a standard deviation above, a standard deviation below. Okay, so you'll see that mirrored in the bar chart here. The rubric level feedback for writing stays the same. Okay, we just have mirrored that writing reporting category again down at the bottom. That's the same data there. Okay, you're rolling around this within your head. Okay, next slide. All right, so as Joellen said, both TAC, so our technical experts we bring in from across the country to help us figure out what our problems are, and AIR both somewhat strongly recommend that we get rid of the scale score reporting at the reporting category level. Nothing changes with the overall. It's just the reporting categories. They recommend not only does it go away from the parent report, but also from all of your aggregates in ORS. Because for the interim, those aggregates are all over the place. And as many of you have seen, we've had concern with teachers knowing how to interpret these scores that are bouncing all over the place. Right? Remember, the interim's purpose was to say how the student would have performed on the summative if they would have taken it that day. It was never intended to give you like a trajectory to where the kids should have been in the spring. So like it was never meant to say fall, winter, spring, right? It wasn't a trajectory. It was if they took the summative that day, that's how they would have scored. Okay? Guy.
Have not covered the entire core at the interim part of the year, although it tests the entire core.
Right. So it's the entire, right? It's the entire assessment. It would be as if they took the summative that day. Okay? So we need to know what this does for you.
So we're going to have you vote. And now remember, going forward, we're thinking about the interims not being the same way they are now because of the utility of what we have right now, right? So we might think about more modular tests going forward. So if you're teaching a geometry unit, then you could, test the geometry in more of a benchmark type fashion rather than these interims that match the summative test. So that's the lens. But as a parent, not having those scores, is having that visual representation okay.
So we didn't put a poll on this. Emily's going to go back. So the question is this page. The first question is for interims. Are we okay with making this change? So I get some head nods in the room saying yes. So the motion on the floor, if you would, is to, move to the green bar, replacing the scale score and error for the ISR for the interim, for the parent report. Does anyone have any dissent in the room to that? Yeah, Hal likes the scale score numbers, which we're trying to help you not hurt yourself with the scale score numbers. Okay. Nope, you don't get the numbers anymore on the interim. All right. And ORS, they're gone. So here's the concern. We know you like the numbers. The numbers aren't being interpreted in a useful manner in almost all cases. We're trying to help teachers not hurt themselves. I know you want the number. We need longer tests to give you a number. Okay? We need longer tests to give you a number. That's where what has gotten us here. The tests are too short to have a number.
Really accurate about what the numbers mean. But people have said we don't want those long tests. We have too much testing. Kids test too much, so we shorten the interim. But with shortening that, then as you know, that widens the margin of error. So on the this is the interim only. So we'll ask again. So on the interim only, you're going to get an overall scale score, and then you'll get these graphic representations, and that's all you'll get. Okay, so Logan is talking about summarizing. Right, so at a classroom or a school or a grade level. But so remember that we're constrained by the constraints of AIR. And so Logan's asking, well, even if I can't have them on the parent report, can I have them at a classroom level or a test level? And the answer is on the interim, no, because of the way the AIR reports this.
Well, and that's how this conversation started with AIR. Was, look, I've got a school that has 200 kids aggregated. Why is this scale score still not doing what we thought it would do? So even at the aggregate level, we've had the psychometricians weigh in on this. That's why in the ORS, instead of getting the aggregate number, you'd get the plus minus equal relative to self like that's now, but we're adding to the proficiency. So you get both plus minus equals for your aggregates. Okay, so Hal's feedback is the plus minus equals are to the self, are difficult to interpret. Okay, understand?
So Logan's question is, would you have this visual representation at a classroom level so you could print off your whole class and you could see that? Absolutely. So like, let's say you had a group of kids that were below in comprehension. You would be able to see that, and that could inform your instruction at the interim. So, and we can have the same conversation at the summative. Now the summative, it still has some error in it, right? You'd have to have 100, 200, 300 questions to have less and less and less error. But it's better than the interim. So, I'm really torn on this issue, right? So that's why we're making these decisions separately, and that's why I wanted your weigh-in. So understanding all of that, did you have a question? Right, because not only are these tests for accountability, but our purposes are we want the tests to be actionable. We want teachers to have the data, to be able to use the data to improve instruction. That's the most important thing. So at the teacher level. So I think that having this graphically at a teacher level for the interims, the problem is if you have a big group of kids that look like with a number, they do great on the interim, then they question the summative if it doesn't come out quite the same and there's too much error. So let's vote one more time.
So there's some discussion online. I don't know if you all can see. So there's been some agree the numbers should be removed. Teachers have a heartache trying to interpret them. Lots of discussion. The The plus minus equal doesn't tell us a lot, so echoing Hal's concern. Emily, can you scroll up on that chat box for me? Get rid of scale scores, shorten the tests. All right. And you look at the purpose, right? So and this is something that we wrestle with, right? So the purpose of these tests was originally to give proficiency. Is the kid proficient or not, right? And a scaled score. We want them to be as structurally useful as possible, but we've shortened them. And it's like being on a frozen lake. The closer you get to the edges, the more dangerous it gets. And we've got teachers tromping all over the edges of this frozen lake, and someone is going to drown, right? Logan. Hang on.
So we're worried about like having teachers do these awful things like going out and getting professional development on geometry and measurement when maybe I didn't need it. Like we talk about like teachers are doing these bad things with this data. What they're doing is they're looking at it and they're deciding to improve their practice in an area. And if maybe because of error or maybe because of some of the thing, maybe they didn't need that professional development, I don't think that the improved instruction in geometry and measurement is a bad thing. It's not like we're perpetuating a disease or something.
No, point well taken, Logan. And I think that those false positives aren't the concern. You've also got false negatives that are exactly the same, right? Where the teacher does need help and it's not really articulating that very well, right? If we could get everyone to stop subtracting the scale scores from the summative to the interim and trying to get a growth metric, our problem would be greatly eased. But there are so many, if we give you the number, Deb says it's not going to happen. If the numbers are there, you're going to take the summative minus the interim and come up with the growth for the reporting categories, and that is not, Hal thinks it's inappropriate in a math class to give a full interim test, and we can argue that point. Right, so Hal's wondering about the purpose in actually giving the interims, right? And that's kind of the flaw with this, because you've got that theory that I've got half the test, half of the year still to teach, so the score should go up at the end. And guess what? Sometimes it doesn't, because it's not sensitive enough to detect that level of quote-unquote growth throughout the year. The interim test is a flawed idea is what Hal says. Okay. Point taken. We're making a change for 1 year going into a new RFP, but I would offer that some of these philosophical decisions that we're making can guide what we want next, right? Going back to if we really value this instructionally sensitive reporting category or lower data point, the number, we need to look at doing something different with our assessments. Hence, Joellen mentioned explorations around this modular benchmark kind of thing that is much more instructionally sensitive than this instrument was designed to be. There are many unknowns with the RFP. Okay. Teachers are continually subscribed to schools. The video is great, but they're still doing it. Yep. Okay, so interim's on the floor. Again, the motion is to get rid of the number across the board in all aspects of the system. Give the green bar interim only, green bar to parents, plus minus equals to parents and in ORS. So the vote. So are we okay? All those in favor, raise your hands. Do you all know how to raise your hands online? You click on the little raise your hand button. There's like 95 people online. Oh, 3 people raised their hand. Look at you. Alpine says yes. Nebo. 8 people of 95, 10, 11. Here they come. 15. Is anyone in the room dissent? Cal, 1, 2. So Salt Lake, Canyons. Tell me where you're from. Vanguard. Park City abstains. We're 40. Yeah, no one takes the test in Park City anymore, so it's all okay. Does anyone online, if you have a strong objection to that, if you could put a comment in so we can review your comment, in addition to the feedback we've received in the room, so we can weigh our decisions as knowing that this, remember how I phrased this decision has to be made fairly quickly to implement whatever we're doing next year. We've got to get it set in. I don't see any comments. Does that mean everyone online either is silent so you consent? You've got a nay, but I don't know why. So if whoever put nay could say nay. Yeah, and guest, I don't know who you are. All right. Oh, there you go, Logan. Brandon was waiting for the nay vote. So I'll let Logan and Brandon go arm wrestle it back at the shop. It's not a comment. Brandon. I love it. Okay, so summative. Dun, dun, dun. Summative. The same issue applies. The summative is a little longer of a test, but not by much. And again, right, we all went down this road of these end-of-course assessments wanting them to be instructionally useful. They've been hijacked for accountability purposes to the point that we've been squozing down to this bare bones kind of accountability assessment that we're still trying to make instructionally sensitive, and I just am nervous about the ice on the edge of the lake. Okay? Okay, hang on, Joanne.
So again, see, Julie and I disagree, and of course I disagree with all the psychometricians and statisticians that keep telling me that this is not very sound practice. But I think that on the summative test, we need to, this is just my opinion, we need to have the scaled score with the error for the reporting categories. So, you know, there's lots of different opinions about this. It's a one year, but this will be the vote.
Same as interim. It's the safest thing that the psychometricians wants us out in the middle of the lake, where the ice is nice and thick as possible. They want us safe, right? Hence the great pressure, right, on us on this. Now, so Joellen, right, she likes the numbers for the summative. I think we like the numbers on the summative. It's 1 year. We've got 3 data points now, right? So put your policy hats on. Put your communication to the field. How many of you want to make this change on summative? No hands in the room. Hal raises his hand on that. Want to make the change to get rid of scale scores on summative. Oh, okay. I was going to say. One online, no on summative. Yeah. Okay, so I believe the intent in the room. Online, I don't see a lot of going on. That was going to be my next question. If we give you the numbers and the bars, I think we haven't talked, notice the mock-up doesn't have that. I don't think it's a hard sell with the real estate to give you the numbers and the bars. So it would be adding the graphical representation instead of taking something away. Was there a... Hal seconds the motion. Granite supports it. Yes? Could you just have the bars for the parents and scaled scores in ORS? I think we could make that... So the motion has been amended to give for the parent report, leave the numbers off. Discussion, Jordan opposes it.
If your parents don't understand the numbers, they don't mean anything to them. But if they do understand the numbers, it's nice for them to see them.
Thank you, Clyde. I would certainly be asking my school what my daughter's number is, I think, as a parent. But that's me. Okay, point taken. Okay. So add. I agreed with Clyde. Let the parents have the numbers. Let the parents have the numbers. Numbers and graphics are good. So maybe. Okay. Let us go back to AIR and see what we can play with. So I don't see anyone opposed to adding the green bars for the parents on the summative. I see lots of concern with taking away the numbers, definitely in ORS, maybe even on the parent report. Let's go back and we will let you know what's possible with AIR and all of that. Have I captured your feedback? Okay. So if you are driving home and you have the moment that Hal just had and go, wait, what did I just agree to? Email me, but the sooner the better. Okay? The sooner the better, because we're going to be distilling this and putting this into some business requirements very shortly. Okay? Okay, good banter. Am I done? I think I'm done. Thank you all.
So that's why I think from, really as we go through this new process and the new tests, and so, I'm going to try to bring as many decisions as possible to the field because, operationally, we can sit here at USOE. It's been a long time since I've been in a classroom, and we want to know how stuff operates in the field. So it's up to you to let me know. So as many of these decisions as we can bring to you, we will. Now, the next decision isn't quite as big, but Jared's going to talk about some different calendar options that you have for next year. So, Jared, take it away. And so he's got 3 different options he's going to show you. We could do all 3. One of them, whatever you decide. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. Yeah, back up. So just before the choice there, if you'll, too far. Go back one more. Go another. Yeah, there we go. All right, so summer school. It will be July 1st to July 29th is when the testing window for summer school is open. You need to let me know. Obviously, it's going to be the LEA and then which tests you're wanting to administer. In the past, it's usually just been a few LEAs that let me know. And then once you let me know, then I'll work with David and AIR, and we'll get the students, get you the file that you need to send us the students' information, and then we will send that on so the students will be able to test. So you can just email me that. Any questions on that? Okay. Next slide. There we go. All right, so this one, sorry, there's no vote on this one. This is just all the tests that are not SAGE that the state has. So you have the windows. This will be posted. I just wanted to show you here. These dates are updated, and yeah.
As you know, with DIBELS, we're making a little change this year or for next year. In the past, we've always just given you end dates of when you need your DIBELS completed, all of your tests. This year, or the next year, we're moving toward actually kind of putting in a window, and it's really not going to affect you a whole lot because in the past, September, the last day of September is the end of the beginning of your testing window. Now we're just, that pretty much hasn't changed. It just says from when you start school, you still have till September 30th. The middle of the year is the big change. Before we just said you need to have everything done by the end of January. Now we're saying it needs to be between December 1st and January 30th. We've had some districts that were testing in November, not very many, a few, but there needs to be, a certain amount of instruction between the time you give the beginning of year and the middle of year. And so we're proposing that the middle of year testing window will be all of December and all of January. So hopefully you can work that in your schedule. And then the end of year, the last day was always June 15th. Now we're saying do it between April 15th and June 15th. So you still have 2 months, but we don't want anybody testing way soon at the end of the year. So is everybody okay with that? Can you see any conflicts there? You can do that whenever. I would put yes. Yeah, definitely. So she was asking the 4 through 6. Some districts test everybody K through 6, and she was wondering the 4 through 6 if she pushed them outside of the window so she could make sure and get the 1 through 3 inside of the window. Yes, that's what we would prefer. We don't collect kindergarten. I mean, that's not mandatory, so yeah, we can do that as well. Right, but that's, I mean, you could do, yeah. I mean, it's fine if you do it within the window, but that's kind of what we're proposing, so yes. That's actually what's preferred. Yes, that's what's preferred. It's to have the same amount of instruction in between each of the testing windows for each of the schools. So Salt Lake is actually, we tested this one first. We're going to test this school first, so there's the same amount of instruction in between the windows. DMG, or DIBELS, the author of DIBELS, they actually have recommendations that you should have so many instructional, I think it's 60, I don't remember, I have to go back and look, but it tells you how many at least instructional days that you should have between your testing windows, and that's kind of what we're trying to play with here, is to make sure that you have enough time in between. So yeah, that's a good practice. Any other questions? Any objections to the testing window? So you can fit it in? Okay, awesome.
So yes, we'll talk more about ACT, but that was one of the proposals. And I also found out that yes, UA dates should be 2017.
How does the testing date for ACT impact Utah High School Activities Association basketball activities?
Sure. Yeah. What?
I will tell you this. So the Utah High School Activities Association sent an inquiry to us as they were setting their schedule. We gave them our best expected dates, knowing that this is now final. Okay? So as Jared talks about having an online option, schools who have online have a longer window, and that should greatly ease the burden. If the kids playing in the basketball team, don't have them test on the day that the basketball team's gone, right? So there will be some flexibility for the schools who can do it online, but it's an ongoing tension, and honestly, I have not circled back with the High School Activities Association to see when they set their dates to see if they came up with a amicable resolution. But the question was asked, and I haven't had that question asked before, so they're sensitive to it to that level. I just don't know where it landed. And there are 2 makeup days, thanks to ACT's surprising responsiveness to some of our requests, that we need a little more flexibility with the administration. And Jared's got a ton of slides on ACT.
Oh. So NAEP is March 10th. Oh, I'll have to get back with Angela then, because that's what, no? The dates I have are January 30th to March 3rd. Okay. Okay, we'll get together and make sure that's correct. All right. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so here's where I'd like some decision or a vote. So this, in an effort to try and be more clear, and to me there's a lot going on here, and it's really small. The idea is to provide some visual as far as dates and the monthly calendars, and be able to let you know when the system's available, when it's not available in testing. So we provide, if you'll go to the next slide. So this is what was provided this year, and there were some questions. We received questions still on when systems will be available. So the idea is, okay, what can we do to provide more clarity, to help people understand what's going on without needing to contact us as much as they have been. So out of these 2, these are the 2 that I've come up with. If you have others, you think, I'm always open. But Emily, if you could just move that, the poll over. So number 1 or number 2, or if both would be helpful to have both. If you could just click in the little circle and give us some feedback as to what would be helpful. Or maybe they're not helpful at all. I don't know. It depends on the LEA and how they use them, and a lot already have schedules in place. It's just getting you the information you need without saying, what in the world is this? How do I know when things will be available? So that's just the hope here. Okay. Pretty... Okay. Safer that way, I guess. Yeah. Okay. You all agree with Joellen, so that's a good sign. That's what she said. Okay. All right. If there's anyone that maybe 5 seconds if you really feel like you need to vote. Okay, we can end that, and that gives me good feedback, so thank you. And do we want to jump to the next one, or is it ACT next? I'm not sure. Who's next? Writing.
All right, back to this year. Okay. I pulled the numbers. They're 2 days old. Okay, I get a delay and then a delay. Okay, but as of 2 days ago, we had 89% of our students either logged in or finished with their assessments, and 84% completely done. So we are quickly winding down with the testing window. As part of that process, some of you received an email, and I wanted to talk through this so everyone knew what was going on. Since this is the first year of writing being scored by the automated scoring engine, right, exclusively to give those immediate reports, there are a couple of validations that have been triggered. So we wanted to let you know this was going on. One of them has direct impact because some student scores may change. If you received an email, you were an assessment director, that means that your LEA had a student or a number of students who were impacted in this data that we're looking at. These are called low confidence results. So when the scoring engine provides the score, there's a how confident are we in that score number associated with that that's generated through that psychometric process. So the bottom group of kids, okay, were identified as being low confidence. Some of these were, we've received inquiries from the field, like the teacher noticed the kid just wrote B, 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 and they were proficient. Okay? Every one of those that have been inquired about, we've checked and they're in this batch. Okay? So I don't know if everyone's noticed all of those, right? So what's going to be happening is we're working with AIR to go back through and, like, if it was a nonsense or, copy paste from the prompt or not written in English and somehow got scored, those are the kind of things that are these edge cases. There's not very many of them. There's like a couple thousand out of the 400-something thousand writing tests that are scored. But those have been flagged. Those are going through a score validation process. Those scores may change. They may not, but they may. And then that second, okay? So these kiddos, there may be some wiggle in a few, of these kids in your LEA. So we will let you know who they are. We will let you know when those scores get changed in ORS so that you can alert the teachers and the parents if that's already been communicated. So that's the right thing to do, to go through. It was kind of a little bit of a, oh yeah, that's how this has to work. So this is the first year. It's a good validation process. In addition to that, there's a 20% back read of, it's a random sample. That's a 20% back read. Those don't change scores for kids. Okay, because it's this random sample. It's basically used to calibrate the scoring engine and to identify concerns going forward. But these kiddos that we had low confidence in, their scores may need to be changed. Right? Does everyone understand that? So it's kind of a double-fold validation of the writing that's happening as we speak, now that we have much volume completed with the testing. Are there any questions or concerns with any of that? Brad? Correct. The question was those kids may or will change. They may change. Upon the review, it may be determined that whatever reason the score isn't going to change for this year. But all of that feedback will be gathered again, not only to look at the certainty of the score from this year, but to improve processes going forward. So, good. Question online? So the file is on MoveIt if we sent it to you. We've sent one batch out. I just got another update to that. So we'll let you know it's still kind of in play. There may be some more kids identified. The first list you got wasn't complete. We have another list. So for sure, before the kids change in ORS, we will let you know definitively. This was just a friendly heads up so you could see the volume. I think Granite had more kids than Alpine, so you can arm wrestle David Smith by just a couple dozen, maybe. But there wasn't any more than, I don't know, a couple hundred or something like that in class. Okay, good. Could this have on how the system scores, which would affect all scores? So going forward, it will be used to improve the scoring of all scores next year. We are not rescoring all scores this year. only the low confidence ones that's like, okay, clearly that cannot be a proficient score because that's just wrong. So, okay, it's really just the very clearly incorrect. Hal. So Hal has some unease on the AI scoring, is looking for some resources to help. Kim and Julie Benson, can you send Hal what we have? And then Hal take a look at it and see what we need to do to make it more transparent or robust or whatever going forward. Yeah, good question. All right, what's next? Oh, we already did those. Yay. Okay, what's after that? Go, go, go. Oh, ACT. Jared, you're back up. Okay, before I give Jared the microphone, no, come here, it's you. I will add that we are still under contract negotiations with ACT for next year. So every slide that Jared has on the ACT has a big asterisk on it. Can you see it? Can you see it? It says pending contract finalization with ACT. So this is the balance of trying to give you a heads up, trying to get things rolling around in your head, but, you know, for the record, nothing's final until that contract is inked with ACT for next school year. Fair enough? That's my disclaimer. Here you go, Jared. Dates are set, barring some complication with the contract. So if the contract goes through, this is what we're looking at, unless there's something that comes up with contract negotiations that wiggle something. The dates are probably the most set thing.
So just so you know about all of our contracts, ACT, the K-3, all of that, the Board of Education has put in 2 new qualifications or requirements when it comes to getting an RFP and a contract. So it has to have 2 Attorney General reviews, once before the RFP is posted, then another one when we're in contract negotiations. So it really takes quite a bit longer to get anything done, and I'm going to say it takes 9 months at the minimum, and it's introduced a lot of risk for us because we're waiting on attorneys for a long time for lots of things. So I just want to put that out there. It's not us being slower about anything. It's just this elongated process now that we have to have these additional reviews. And I apologize.
Okay. Next slide. Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. Let's see. We'll see if we can make sense of this. Accommodations and Ebuary. Emily's just saying this is how it looks when it converts to Adobe sometimes. All right, so as far as the dates, you have the initial date that was somewhat discussed already, February 28th. Then there's 2 testing windows, one for accommodations and one for online testing. We'll get into online in just a minute. And then there's 2 dates for makeup testing. And so you have a little bit more opportunity to be able to test students that have things come in the way. Next slide. So as far as online testing, I tried to include some stuff here. We're still talking with ACT and trying to figure out specifics. We had a call yesterday. We're hoping to have future calls frequently about this information. So what I have here is about what we have for us and sharing that with you. A couple things to point out. One would be the students. It's not like SAGE where you can split it up. When a student goes in to take the ACT and they're online, they have to finish the ACT that day. They can't spread it out over the window. So the window is more allowing you to get kids in there to test, not spreading out the test for the students. Technical coordinator is needed, and this is all pretty similar. The one thing you may notice there is proctor caching, which Julie was going to talk about, because we're looking at doing this more at a state level rather than LEA or school.
So those of you who've been here as long or longer than I may remember the word TestNav through Pearson System. That is what ACT uses to administer their online assessment. TestNav through Pearson System strongly recommends the use of a Proctor caching system, which means you've got to have hardware locally that's downloading the content that the kids' workstations talk to, et cetera, et cetera. We've gone away from Proctor caching for everything else wherever physically possible because of our robust network in the state. So we have pushed back to ACT and said, take a look at our network. We want to have a state-level Proctor caching. Again, to my surprise, they said, okay. So the devil will be in the details on that. So we've got a meeting set up with ACT's technical folks because certainly it's lower risk for them to have Proctor caching in the schools. So this is a risk point to be thinking about locally. It's more invasive technology-wise. It requires more staff babysitting, right, of what's going on. It's not just hit the browser and test and everyone's done. There's more invasiveness locally. It is the only test that's high stakes for kids, right? So as I have talked to ACT about this, I mentioned that we've been trying to outlaw the use of backhoes in the state during our testing windows for a while now and have not been very successful with that because the backhoe cuts the fiber line in the middle of the test. That's one of the questions I have is, okay, you've got this requirement. The kid sits for 5 continuous hours. What happens when the backhoe cuts the line and there's not a Proctor caching server? We still got to finish the test in some sort of a usable manner. So conversations in play. Just be thinking about that locally. And, you know, the access assessment, they wanted local caching, and we were able to push that at least regionally, some possible. A backhoe signal fade. The signal faded because of a backhoe. Thank you, Guy, for the technical reference for that condition. So it's in play, right? So we're trying to advocate and figure out how to manage the risk, you know, locally as well. So more to come on the technical requirements of that.
And included in the PowerPoint are some links that give you some of the information as far as the technical overview of what's going to be needed for online testing. The technical guide shown link here, a lot of it is that Proctor caching. Probably 3/4 of the manual or guide is that. So, but it does give you some information. Also, at the bottom of the slide, there's a video for students that they could watch to show them how to take the test online. Just some resources for you.
Save you time. Okay, so is the online choices by school?
Yeah, so schools, LEAs can have schools do the online or paper. So yeah, it's dependent on the school level.
With the second makeup date of April 19th for the ACT, a paper-only version, how does that impact when LEAs will receive results from the ACT?
So they gave us several dates to choose from, and we chose the 3 that were earliest in the year so that it wouldn't affect how we've received it in the past. So it should play out as it has this past year.
Thanks. I just want to clarify, can a school do some of their kids online and some paper pencil?
No, right now it's just based at the school level. Their hope is to get to that point, but right now it's school by school.
I'm going to hijack Jared's slides here in the essence of time. Jared has a bunch of slides here that give you some sort of oversight of some of the hardware and software and all that. Take a look at it. Know that this change, I mean, this is a big change. This is the last assessment to go online. We always said it would be the last because of the logistics. I just can't even imagine trying to get all your, you know, juniors through this. The window helps greatly. So take a look at the hardware. More will be coming on the ACT, and we're going to move on to what's next, which is, oh, Joellen.
In our ACT negotiations, we're also working on the optional writing. And I just didn't say that. So if a student wants to take writing, we have a group of students that ACT won't score writing on one day and the rest of the test on another day. So if they participate in state level testing, they have to go take the whole test again if they want the writing. And there's some universities that require writing. So what's going to happen next year is that students will be able to opt into the writing portion so that it can all be tested on the same day. That costs $15 for students. And so I'm trying to work with ACT so that it's manageable, because what they want us to do now is just bill you guys for all the tests that are taken, and we can't do that as a state. You know, it's just, but you guys just won't pay your bills, so it's just really not kidding. Probably true. Yeah, there's some truth to that. So we're trying to figure out a way with ACT, and ACT's data systems are really antiquated. I mean, up until this last year, they were sending us the data on a disk, and they couldn't remember who they sent it to. So, I mean, it's really tough. So we want to so they're trying to figure this out, but I do want you to know that the writing portion will be available, but it'll be optional next year.
Writing online?
Yes. Well, I think it's both. Writing, yeah, I mean, it's whatever the school chooses. So she's asking if the writing's online, and the answer is yes, it'll be either paper pencil or online based on what your school chooses, is my understanding.
For the online testing, do all students at a school need to be tested as one cohort, or could there be different groups on different days within the testing window?
I think there'd be you'd have to do it that way. You have to have different dates. That's why you have a window for the online, because you'll have to be bringing different groups of kids into a computer lab to test. Yeah, unless you're one-to-one. Yeah, if you're lucky enough to be one-to-one, you could do it all on the same day. But you do have the flexibility of a window.
Yeah, the technical requirements, right? Remember, this is a high-stakes assessment for students, so ACT is very conservative on their recommended implementation. So that's why we've given you the information that we have right now. Take a look at it, see how it meshes with your environment, right? And start having these conversations about what are the gaps from what you've done. And some schools may not be able to use the online option because you've implemented a technology configuration that can't be used for the ACT. We are not going to have flexibility with the ACT on that. So this is an early warning to start looking to see how your setups mesh with what ACT is going to require. So we're grateful for the online option and as much flexibility as they've gotten to, but as Joellen says, I think I tell them on every call, did you hear that? The 80s called. They want their data systems back. Julie Benson. Question online. Accommodations available for the online option? Yes, as far as we know. Right, Jared? Yeah. Just the same. And, we've worked with ACT on the pain points, right? So the establishment process, what a pain. We're pressing them on that. The accommodations process, what a pain. We're pushing them on that. So again, everything's tentative till we can squeeze them as far as we can and ink it in the contract to try and reduce pain, as ACT only increases with, focus and attention. And certainly, like I said, it's the only high stakes for kids. So yeah, ACT is not very motivated to just make changes for our little population. Although Jared and I, at Joellen's request, have been participating with a statewide kind of users group with ACT. We'll be meeting again with the other states who have contracts with ACT at ACT's invitation. And again, last year, it was gloves off in that room. And ACT just took a beating from the states and have come back. And like I said, to my surprise, they've been a little flexible on a few things that we didn't think they would be. So to their credit, like I told Jared yesterday after our call, wow, when they don't make me mad, it's hard for me to write an email saying what happened because I wasn't mad after our call. Here you go, Benson.
Quick update on the K3 tool. As you know, it had to go out for RFP again. They've added another review. I think Joellen would mention this earlier, another legal review that it has to go through. It did. We just got an update from Joe. it passed legal review, but they did some edits, and so now state purchasing wants to redo their review. So it's delayed even longer. But once it finally gets approved and we can post it, it will just go through the regular process. It'll be posted for 3 weeks. Then we'll have a selection committee come in, go through all the RFP or all the proposals. We'll make a selection, and it will be just like last year. There will be, we're hoping it'll be open so more vendors will apply, and then you'll have more options to whatever you want to do as a district. Yes. We have a list of like 8, I don't remember all of them, like Amplify, Vport, Illuminate, Mastery Connect. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. I don't know if Joe's got them. But we did send at least 8 out there to companies saying we've got this RFP out, or when it's posted we will. So please apply. I don't remember all of them. Oh, DMG, yes, DMG was one of them. So anyways, we'll see how it all plays out, but hopefully we'll have multiple vendors that you can select from, and then it will move forward. The contract will be rewarded, negotiations, and then the finalizing of the contract and board approval. All of this still has to happen before we can have something in place. So we're working our hardest, but like Joellen said, it's just stuck in all of these reviews. I don't know. The math is cost-free for 1 year, I think is what they're negotiating. The RFP is strictly for the literacy component, so if DMG decides to throw in math, I think that's going to be, we're going to have to see what they propose in their bid. Yeah. So, any other questions? Yeah. It's not mandatory because, good question, she was asking if the Pathways of Progress is embedded in the RFP. It's not mandatory. Pathways of Progress is proprietary of DMG, the author of DIBELS, and they are very selective on who can have that information. Right now it's only Amplify and Vport. And of course, DMG. So unless they open it up to other people, that's why we didn't put it as a mandatory piece, because they don't have it now, but they do have an agreement. They could if they wanted to implement it. So good question. She was asking if Vport had the Pathways of Progress. They could if they chose to go in that direction because they have the same agreement that Amplify does. They just haven't implemented it like Amplify. So good clarifying question. Right. Right. We do calculate it we do calculate it at the state level. So if you choose a vendor that doesn't have the Pathways of Progress, we will calculate that for you at the end of the year. So you will have those calculations. So, yes. Is there any chance there will be a demo offered for each of the vendors so we can make more informed decisions on which would suit our needs best? We can. Yeah, we haven't done that in the past. We've, I think, sent snapshots out and kind of told you pros and cons of each one. So we can definitely do more so you've got a more informed, so you can make a more informed decision based on who applies. So, any other questions? It's in the review process. It's at state purchasing right now. So as soon as state purchasing approves it, then we can publish it. So no dates as of yet. Okay. 3. I went to a 3-year contract. Yeah. And we'll do the same thing that we did last year. And so each year you'll have a choice of which vendor you want to choose. So if you choose one vendor for the first year and realize that that's not really the direction you want to go, you will be able to change every year, but not during the year. So there'll be an open enrollment period once we have this all finalized where you select your vendor for the year, and then you can't change again until that open enrollment every year. So, and that's all I have, unless there's any other questions. I think it's Sid.
I just have a couple of quick updates for WIDA. You should have received your score reports on the 17th. So you had the printed and the online versions were available. We have a couple of professional development opportunities coming out. There are flyers along with the email, so if you would pass that along to your EL community. The first one is a webinar that will be next Wednesday on the 25th from 4 to 5. It's open to anyone who's looking at reports. The first 30 minutes will be kind of a brief introduction to what's available on the reports. The second 30 minutes will be a Q&A session. And then we also have one full day PD available. It will be June 13th. It's here in Salt Lake. It's a limited participation, so we only have 45 participants that can
come participate. So if you will make sure you pass out that flyer to anyone in your EL community that would be interested in interpreting score reports, so looking at those score reports and using them for instruction, will be that day. The on-track number is listed here as well as on the flyer. The test window for next year is available. It's on the sheet that Jared sent out as well as online. But right now the test window is similar to what we had this year. It starts January 9th and goes through March 10th. So it's actually a 9-week window, which is what we had this year with that extended week where we added that week on, added the 9th week. So we have a 9-week window again next year. The pre-ID files are due, I think, December 2nd. So fairly similar to what the schedule was this year, will be again for next year. And then finally, just a heads up, WIDA is coming up with an online screener that they will be eventually replacing the WAPT with, but the WAPT will be supported through the 2016-17 school year. So as we get more information about that screener, we'll make sure that to keep you updated on that. But it will be online, really similar to what the Access online test looks like, but in screener form. So questions about anything we did? Yeah. So with it being online, the scoring of reading and listening is still scored automatically. The speaking and writing is scored by hand. So the scoring it'll still be the reports later in the year. So the concern was specifically with speaking, which we've heard before, that the students maybe were hesitant to speak into the microphone, and maybe they're speaking, they weren't speaking as long as they would when they had the face-to-face proctor. They may have been embarrassed doing it with a student who was even a couple of computers away. So that's a good thing to look at. Actually, that's one of the things that I've asked WIDA for in some of our data reviews, to specifically look at our speaking scores compared to how they were in the past, to look specifically at, is this online speaking a concern as it is affecting how the students are performing on the assessment. So we'll keep that, keep you informed on that, but thank you for bringing that up because that is a concern. Other questions? Okay. Tracy.
Really quickly, we just wanted to give you a DLM update. As of Monday, we had a total of 4,090 students that have completed DLM testlets. So right now we have 294 students that are not finished. So those are pretty good numbers. And then we also wanted to let you know that there is a teacher survey that DLM will be sending out through Educator Portal. It won't be until June 3rd, but we're encouraging you to encourage your teachers to fill this survey out and give feedback to DLM on how this has been working and how it ties to their instruction. It gives DLM a source of validity. It helps them look at the quality of their assessment. So right now you can find the survey on the DLM site, home site, which I've provided here for you as well, not the Utah home site, just the DLM home site, Dynamic Learning Maps. And there's a link as well too. So please have your teachers give that feedback to DLM for sure. And then I believe Shar and Tori are passing out. Starting next year, we have a DIBELS alternate for grades 1 through 3. We pilot it with a few of the LEAs this year, and so we just want you to know that this is available for next year. So there's a memo here that's been put out, and it's on our website. So it's based off of the essential elements that DLM runs through. So for any of your kiddos that haven't been able to access DIBELS in the past, we now have something for them to use. Our alternate assessment runs right in alignment with general assessment. So we will follow suit with what happens with the general assessment as we find out. Anything else? Okay, thanks.
I believe there's a comment, a place for them to comment on that. Oh, the question was, will the survey address testing issues? I think for DLM, yes, issues for DLM. I think what they're kind of looking for is more like alignment with DLM2, but there's a comment box. And if you, I am taking feedback on any of that, so please feel free to have your teachers email you, email me feedback with DLM, and I take it back to them and we discuss it. So we're open to that for sure.
Thanks, Tracy. Is Apple next? It is. All right, this is just a quick update as we've been talking about the implementation of our dual language immersion assessment for those schools involved in that statewide program. Again, as of yesterday, we're waiting to hear back from legal on whether or not we can pursue a sole source application to acquire Apple, or whether or not it needs to go out to an RFP to a broader group of providers. So having a fall administration is greatly contingent on that process. Okay, if I don't have a contract in place, it makes it difficult for us to conduct an assessment. But the one thing you do have control over is looking at enrollment. So for you that have dual immersion schools, the SAGE course code list actually tags the DI courses, the dual immersion courses. So that is the list we'll be using to trigger the assessment for students enrolled in those courses in schools that are part of the state program. David? Okay, let me see if I can repeat that then. So I thought they were the same. So the elementary has those dual immersion core codes. For the secondary, for 7th, 8th grade, we'll be looking to add some course codes to that list of triggering course codes for Apple. So let's see, learn something new every day. All right, so but that is the one thing you have control over. So if you can make sure that your kiddos are enrolled in the courses under those and that Cactus has the school marked as a state participating dual immersion school. Those are the two flags we'll look at to pull students to be eligible for the dual language immersion assessment when we get off the ground with that. Hogan. Hi. Good. Yes, we will create, knowing that, we will create a separate PDF that's just for dual language immersion for those grade levels. Yep, we will separate those out and add the ones, and we, meaning David, will do that, and let me know when that's done. Yeah, so Clyde's question is not to be confused with the local use of Apple for your foreign language programs or whatever else. That's correct. This is just for the state implementation for dual language under Greg Roberts schools. So you may be using this assessment or other assessments. I haven't looked at our assessment inventories to see if you put Apple on there for anything else. Did you? Hal said yes. So yeah, so I haven't looked, honestly, but that's a great point. Yeah, it's separate from your local implementation of Apple. So related to that, I know I've got Granite's reports from Greg on some things that Granite does to report the dual language proficiency back to their parents separate from what Apple has provided. So if you have some other ideas on how to make the reporting of Apple, let's just look at Apple right now, to make that useful to your teachers, programs, parents, whatever, I am all ears. We are looking at adding an element to the data gateway to have some sort of something for Apple. So if you dream that up on the ride home, let me know what that is, because now is the time that we can be working on that even while we're in the background trying to get a contract in place. So that's Apple. Any questions on dual immersion? All right, Angela.
Hey, so I was a little ahead of myself. I actually got an email out yesterday notifying all of the districts that what schools have been selected. Unfortunately, with all my support I got, they attached the wrong attachment. And so I've corrected that. About half of you got the school right below you, the district right below you's attachment. So you got a second email right away stating what schools you have. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay, so Oh yeah, and that's okay. It's all random. They're willing to go out there. They send their people out there and they test them. They don't mind. I know. Well, there's actually teams that really enjoy that, and that they kind of vacation and they do that. So they bring their RVs and they spend the whole time out there. So they actually have a pretty good time. If you have questions, concerns, anything about the NAEP assessment, call me, email me. I am more than happy to talk to you about it. I had a couple emails back yesterday asking me, what the load is going to be on the IT staff. You don't have a load. Like, all you need to do is provide a flat surface with some outlets nearby. We bring all of our own laptops. We bring everything. We bring our staff. Occasionally, if you have a lot of kids that have accommodations, we will ask for the SPED teacher to come and support those assessments. But we bring, we'll be running, it's a little bit different. Some of you who have tested now with the computers know we have to run 2 consecutive assessments, and they last about 2 hours. Not so much because we don't answer the background questionnaires as a state. We opted out of that a few years back. So a little under 2 hours. Then we'll have a break because usually we've got to accommodate for a lunch, and then we'll start the second session. So our people take care of it all. Yeah. You have any questions? We're doing math and reading this year. We'll get state level results. We also have some pilots. We've got a writing pilot to do a comparability study on the computer results versus the old paper pencil. So we'll be doing that, and then we've got civics, geography, and U.S. history. I could break down the numbers. I'd only kind of looked at, we have, right, and obviously the bigger the district, the larger the number of students in the school, the higher the probability that you're going to be selected. So I know that we have a total of 248 schools that were selected this year in Utah. But if you look at other states like Wyoming, they have like an entire school that is quadruple hit. So they will test hundreds of kids because they just don't have as many schools. So you're right, you have a lot of insider knowledge now on the subject. But well, it's every year we get national results in our small year. You don't feel those as much because we have very small sample size. And then the state year, which is coming up next year, we have a large sample size. The pilots, it'll all be spiraled in, so there's not that many. I think I have 3 that got both the regular and the pilot, only 3 schools in the state. And they're in my big district, so there's not many. Yeah. So not a lot. Yes, yeah. So if you have questions, or you just want to stone me because it's one more test, here's your opportunity. This is what I look like. Okay. Just call me. My cell numbers, I posted it all on this, so you can go back and look it up. But call me on my cell. I'm easiest to reach there. Thanks.
Well, we put in our memo that the meeting was going to go from 9 till noon, so I'm getting you out of here an hour early today. I want you to remember that when next time the meeting goes long, that I gave you an extra hour in your day. So we appreciate you being here. If you have any comments, concerns, questions, our whole team is available. Please make sure you check out our website and anybody that you'd like to talk to. We have a general assessment line now that is sort of on a rotating thing, so it's always will be answered. And our support staff is really great to give us those messages. And we're always available by email. So anyway, thank you so much for coming and appreciate it today. Have a good rest of your day.